Hey, welcome back. So we're talking about, like I said, so all that being said, I don't see it as a death spiral. I mean, we've been predicting the death of political parties forever. We were predicting the death of the Republican Party in 68 with Barry Goldwater. We predicted the death of the Democratic Party in 2000 with George W. Bush. I mean, I still remember the jokes about Democrats being an endangered species after the 2000 election, and for a decade, the Democrats had to kind of pull themselves together. They ran John Kerry, for crying out loud, trying to pull themselves back together and figure out how to be a party again. And Karl Rove was so convinced that he had figured out how to win elections so well that he talked about the permanent Republican majority, that a center-right country is going to have a permanent Republican majority because of the way that Republican candidates in 2000 and 2004 were appealing to the voters. And that it doesn't happen. So I don't see. I get what's the thing? It's not confirmation bias. What's the bias where everything just stays the same? You assume it's always going to be the same.
Oh, normalcy bias.
Normalcy bias. Yeah. So I assume that I'm devolving to normalcy bias here. But we've had these two parties that have been grievously wounded at other times during the history, and leadership has always been able to figure out what to do with it. And come back in a cycle or two. Now, with this, I mean, Donald Trump has certainly defied expectations from everybody on the political class that has rendered an opinion. I don't remember. We'd have to look back at the different shows. I don't know that if I ever came out and said I didn't think that he was going to be the nominee. I might have. I can't remember. I'm not saying one way or the other.
Well, it wasn't until I think January that either one of us went, hold on, I think Donald Trump is real.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, I know. I never thought it until January.
I can't tell you. If people want to go into YouTube and you should.
You should go. Doc and Lefty channel.
Watch the old shows. You can comment on the Facebook that I was predicting Donald Trump wouldn't make it past March of, I don't know, but maybe I said that, I can't remember, but it certainly has taken a lot of people by surprise. But should it have? And that's what we're going to talk about next. Should the rise of Donald Trump have taken, and not just the rise of Donald Trump, but the backlash against Hillary? We're going to talk about the Democrats too. Unless you want me to give my pros and cons about Hillary quick before we do that.
We can do that a little bit later.
Okay.
One of the things I thought that I would talk about just briefly.
Yeah.
To my conservative Christian friends, either you believe God has America in his hands or you don't. And if this is the way it's supposed to be according to God's will, you need to let it go and have it be God's will. Holding on to this bitterness is not going to be good for you. The second thing I want to point out, I don't recall. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not like I've paid attention to the Democrats like I do the Republicans, but I don't recall a Democrat going out and backstabbing another Democrat after they lost, just like Cruz's fundraiser is now fundraising for the Democrats simply because he doesn't want Trump in there.
Not so public. But the Democrats haven't had this, and it could have maybe somebody when Hubert Humphrey got the nomination in 68, without winning a primary. They just gave it to him. Maybe then, but we haven't had a primary season where a candidate that was winning legitimately had so much resistance from inside the party. That's something that hasn't happened in the last few. George W. Bush certainly wasn't popular right away, but gained popularity. Bill Clinton certainly wasn't popular in the 92 primary right away, but the support coalesced around him. But we haven't seen this happen where the establishment has thrown up its hands and said,
"Well, and we
don't know what to do."
They're actively the Republican establishment is actively seeking to destroy its nominee. I have never seen this in politics. Period. The bottom line is, Trump won fair and square. He went through exactly the same process everybody else went through. He came out the winner. That's the way it goes. And if you're going to continue to try to sabotage Trump, all you're doing is guaranteeing a Democratic victory. And one of the questions I want to ask my conservative friends, are you really better off with Barack Obama in office or John McCain or Mitt Romney? If you really think that you're better off with Hillary in office rather than Trump, then you are part of the problem. You're the reason why Trump is popular. And when you sit there and start talking about, oh, he's a closet Democrat, the rest of it, yeah, he might be, but he's a Republican nominee de facto at this point. The other thing is, my last point I want to make about the Republicans, I hear a lot about, well, if he's going to be our leader, I'm going to give up my Republican status. Terrific. Get out. That's what I'm telling you. Don't get me wrong. I have been mad. On this show, I have said I'm a libertarian, but I still have not turned in my card. When you leave the Republican Party because of this, you are letting the establishment win. You are removing your voice from the process, and you're no better than a little bird nagging somebody at the window. That's what I'm going to say. You can mark, hey, Mad, you can mark this one as Dr. Petrosia's statement to his conservative friends. So let's move on to the Dems. What kind of problems are the Dems going to be having coming up?
Oh,
because they keep, every once in a while I see that they're talking about a contested convention.
Well, no, Bernie's talking about a contested convention. Nobody else is talking about a contested convention. Bernie wins Indiana and is going to win. He's probably going to win West Virginia tonight. But this, man, you draw me into this stuff because you know that I love it, but I can't. It's hard. It's hard because I don't want to. You know that I like Bernie Sanders, and you know that I like his supporters, and I don't want to come off as being too smug about it, but I saw a Facebook post that said all Bernie Sanders has to do to win the delegate count outright is win Florida 75-25. Oh, that's all he has to do. That's all he has to do.
Oh, that's all he has to do.
Right? Then why hasn't he done it already?
It's guaranteed he's able to be the nominee then.
I can't. I read that and my jaw dropped, and I thought, this is the kind of thinking that gets that. This is the kind of thinking, and if you don't tamp down on this kind of stuff, if you're the candidate, that allows your supporters to become bitter and angry and think that everything is rigged against them. Nobody wins. He won 81-19 in his home state, right? I think is what Vermont was. Vermont, which has 300,000 people in it, and they almost all look like each other. Right?
They all look like Bernie.
Yeah, it's like Iowa. It's a small state that's almost completely white, with not completely homogenous political views, but it's been a blue state for a long time up there. That's not how California looks. So you say that and you're like, oh my gosh, all right. So no, Bernie has this argument that he says it's impossible for Hillary to get the majority of the pledged delegates by the convention, which is true. She's not going to get to 2383, whatever it is, with pledged delegates alone. Neither did Barack Obama in 2008. In fact, I don't think, and I'm pretty sure that the only Democratic nominee to get them only on pledged delegates, and I'm probably wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure it was Al Gore, because Al Gore beat Bill Bradley so bad in the first two contests that Bill Bradley just dropped out, and Gore swept the rest of the states.
Yep.
I don't think Kerry did, because 15% of Democratic delegates are superdelegates. That means that there's only 85% of the total available for pledged delegates, and if you're running a near 50-50 split, and honestly, and Hillary's like, I think 54%, and he's at 47 or 40, it's not quite adding, that doesn't really add up. But that if you're running that close, there's no possible way you could get the majority just in pledged delegates. If that's because her overall margin of victory has been about 55, where she's been polling 55-56%. Yeah. So that's not enough to get a majority. So you need the pledged delegates to put you over the top. So he makes these two arguments. He says, one, the pledged delegates are terrible. We should get rid of them, and they're subverting the will of the people. But if the people pick Hillary with the popular vote, which they have, and she wins the majority of the delegates, which she is right now, then the pledged delegates should switch allegiances and join me because I'm the more electable candidate. So he wants to say that the superdelegates are both subverting and obverting the process, and it just makes my head spin to listen to him and his supporters talk about his road to the nomination, which is just not very likely. So he says there's going to be a contested convention. okay, I guess no.
Well,
but
now Debbie Wasserman Schultz has always been one of the people that, honestly, from my opinion, is handpicked by the Clintons to run the DNC. She hasn't stepped in very much to this battle at all.
She shouldn't. She's the party chair.
Okay.
She has no dog in this fight.
So when you have Reince Priebus stepping in, trying to support anybody but Ted Cruz until Ted Cruz is the last guy standing, and then anybody but Trump, you can very well compare and contrast the establishment style. The Democrats seems like they leave the candidates alone until they get a clear nominee, and then they step in and support. Joe wants to know, why do you want to bash a socialist, in other words, Bernie, when you're a collectivist yourself?
Because I think Hillary would be a better president.
And why do you think Hillary would be a better president?
Because she's smarter than anybody else who's running.
All right, you have an IQ test for that,
just listen to everybody talk. It's obvious that she's smarter, more competent than anybody else who's running this field.
All
obvious.
Right. Okay.
I mean that. Yeah.
So what happens? What happens if Bernie does get a contested convention? I mean, how is the establishment for the Democrats gonna step in?
I don't see how it's possible, because the superdelegates aren't gonna change. So she just wins the first ballot, and he kicks and screams and says that he wants a second, or he wants a recount. That's about it. I mean, once she gets the majority of votes on the first ballot, that's it. She's nominated.
Okay.
So I don't know how that's. So I don't know at this point how it would be possible for him to have a contested convention.
What problems do you think Bernie's going to cause Hillary down the road?
Well,
I mean, in the convention, specifically in the convention.
I don't think he's going to. He wants control of the platform, which is fine. No one cares about the platform, but honestly, it would be better for Democrats to kind of. Well, and this is segueing into where I think the parties are now, because I have an opinion about the Democratic Party and where it's going that feeds into a little bit of what Bernie's complaints have been. For years and years and years, there was a pretty stark contrast between the Republicans and Democrats, where the narrative was the Republicans were for corporate interests or corporate and business interests, and the Democrats were for labor. That was fairly well established in the 50s, 60s, 70s, going into the 80s. That's where the two parties kind of stood. And in the 90s, Bill Clinton, with incrementalism and Clintonian style of democratic politics, kind of subverted that a little bit. Said, "Hey, look, corporations aren't evil. We need them. We need their support. We need to work with them. They're not the enemy. They can be our partners. We need to reach out and sort of repair those relationships as Democrats, because we've been getting trounced in presidential elections for years and years with Nixon and Reagan and Eisenhower. So." But in doing that, reaching out to some of the corporate interests, and then with the tech bubble, where jobs are being created in non-traditional fields for the Democratic base, or manufacturing being shipped overseas, and so on and so forth, you saw the Democratic Party shift away from its traditional roots, more towards these academic elites, more towards these banking elites, more towards what has been seen as the Republican base, and those workers, labor, not a natural fit for a lot of the Republican political establishment, found nowhere to go, either became independents or moved to the Republican side of the ledger over the last just handful of years. The Democrats would do well to try and figure out how to win those folks back, because that's the split you see with the Democrats. The split is you're ignoring labor to the preference of corporatism. Who are you now? Are you moderate Republicans? This isn't the Democratic Party that I grew up with, and I think that's where the resentment and the anger is coming from, which I think that's a healthy debate for the party to have, because are you going to? The Democrats have a pretty clear, just like you said, the Republicans have a clear choice to make, or clear question to answer. I think Democratic candidates up and down the board have a clear question to answer too. Are you going to stand up for working people, organizing for fair wages, for time off, the things that labor has traditionally cared about, and also, are you going to make room for them in a new economy? Are you going to stand up for things like job training and the like, that these folks can come back into the fold and not feel so disaffected and so angry, or are you not? Are you going to ignore them?
All right. So your solution for not the Republicans, but the Democrats would be to start reaching back out to the blue collar workers.
Yes.
That the academic elite has a tendency to shun and make fun of.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
How are they going to do that?
Well, I don't think it is so difficult as it is on the Republican side, because I don't think that, and this is where, if your brother is mad at me now, he's going to be really mad at me after I say this, because I don't think that the Democratic Party has been, over the last 20, 30 years, a party of grievance the way that the Republican Party has become. I think that the Republican Party, the split in the Republican Party, to me, seems more serious. At least it seems more bitter, because Republican politicians have promised the social conservatives, the folks that care about identity politics, the folks that care about social issues, for years and years and years have promised, we're going to get rid of Roe v. Wade. We're going to get rid of birth control. We're going to roll back Social Security. We're going to get rid of Medicaid. We're going to all these different things that social and fiscal conservative, like the base, has been railing against forever as evil threats to the republic. Their politicians have been promising them that we're not just going to address them and fix them. We're going to get rid of them, which is completely unreasonable in a democracy, in a representative democracy the way that we have it. Because you have to come up with compromises. You have to do the business of government. You have
to come up with ideas. Yeah,
you have to have ideas.
You have to have an idea. You have to have a plan.
We're going to get rid of Obamacare.
Great.
Right. So they've been promised this stuff, and they elect these guys saying, finally, this is the guy that's going to do it. And they don't. Because
Scott Brown.
Yeah, because the promises are impossible. They're playing a game where they're creating grievance. I'm not saying that there aren't ways to roll back some stuff.
Well, let's take a break.
Yeah.
We're going to continue to talk about Republicans and how they're a party of grievance, and Democrats how they're a party of snooty elites. Mm-hmm. Right after this break, we want to thank all of our sponsors. Without you, we couldn't do what we do. Des Moines Anesthesia at 515-574-6442. They do sports med, pain medicine and anesthesia. Halo Capital, Labinas Law Firm, and Bertrosian Associates. We'll be back right after this break.